to the Work Wonders podcast, brought to you by Asta HR, where we simplify the human side of business. I'm Angela.
And I'm Susan. Let's dive into today's episode and find out what you've been wondering about. In today's episode of the Work Wonders podcast, we're talking all about the secure jobs and better pay, aimed at job security and gender equity. We'll be talking about what the changes mean for you, what you'll need to do, and where to start. So let's get started. This is the Work Wonders podcast.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
So secure jobs, better pay. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. And if anyone's aware of it, they'll know that the government's had this implementation timetable. So there's some things that have already come in that we've previously spoken about in previous episodes. But this is the next thing that's coming up on the 6th of June.
Yeah, so we're just talking about things that are coming out for that deadline, because there is a lot, isn't there? So luckily it is phased in, because otherwise we'll be busy.
That's right. So we're spoon feeding, not spoon feeding. What is the word? But anyway, bit by bit.
That's right.
So you don't have to swallow it all at once.
So specifically today we're talking about unpaid parental leave, or changes to, and also the requests for flexible work.
Exactly.
Yeah? Okay. So maybe we should start with what that is.
Yeah, and talking about what's changed.
What the changes are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unpaid parental leave is what we'd probably all be familiar with calling maternity leave, but it is open to the parent, so, whichever. And it's about the unpaid period where they're entitled to have time off work when they're going to care for their young child, and they have the right to come back to their job after that time. Now, nothing really has changed in terms of time frames in terms of the legislation. They get the 12 months and they have the right to ask for that to be extended another 12 months.
Or less.
Or less,
yeah,
up to
12
months.
months.
Yeah. So that's not changing. But what exists currently in legislation, there's a lot lacking in terms of why a person can ask when and how long for, and what the employer needs to do. So that's what's changing, what the employer needs to do.
Exactly.
The same thing for flexible work, really. That's been around for quite a while. People can ask for flexible work.
Yeah.
But again, there wasn't much in the legislation in terms of defining what an employer had to do to respond to that request. So that's, again, what's changing.
Yeah. So in theory, this should actually make it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Because everyone will be clearer where we stand.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
So let's look at what happens with unpaid parental leave, I guess. You have an eligible employee. Eligible meaning, they've qualified for their up to 12 months, the original piece of unpaid, and then they want to extend it. And so they make a request to extend it. What's the obligation for the employer?
Okay, well, it's twofold. They need to discuss it with their employee.
So you can't say straight off the bat, no, can't do it, we're expecting you back at work.
No.
You've got to come back in January.
No, you'd need to discuss it with them. It's just really about understanding their perspective, why they need that, how they see it working, and you can obviously converse back with them, tell them what you need as well.
And you've just pointed to some really relevant questions to ask when you get that request, is asking for their input on how they think it would work. Yep.
And the second thing they need to do is respond to the employee in writing.
In writing, okay.
So that's new.
Yeah.
So that could be something simple, just a simple letter on your letterhead, something to say, thank you for raising this request with us, and here is our response, whether it be, yes, that's fine, we now expect you to come back on X date, or no, unfortunately, we've declined that for A, B and C reason. So
the bottom line there is the reasonable business grounds.
Yeah, so that's not changing either. So an employer can decline that request based on, what legislation calls the reasonable business grounds.
So should we run through what might be reasonable grounds? That could be that it's going to be too expensive.
Okay, yeah.
So you're going to have to employ a replacement for a longer time. Theoretically, that wouldn't be more expensive, but there may be reasons that it's too costly for you to be without that person in the workplace.
Yeah.
Secondly, that there's no capacity to change working arrangements of the other employees to fit in with
Right.
the request.
So if someone's been taking over extra duties while so-and-so's been away
Exactly.
and that can't continue, yep,
They might
okay.
need to return to the substantive role because they haven't been able to complete everything that they needed to complete.
Mhm.
It could also, and related to that, be that it's impractical to change your working relationships.
Yep.
There might be a need for recruiting a new employee to take over that extra leave. That's one example where it would be more costly, of course. And then a couple of other reasons around efficiency or productivity and whether there's going to be some significant negative impact on customer service.
Okay. So if that person's absent from work and you've got no other option and that's going to decrease customer service or productivity, yeah, okay.
And I guess, if you've had someone on parental leave and you've been telling your clients,
Yep.
such and such is going to be
Sure.
back to look after you. So there's plenty of reasonable grounds.
Yes.
What is different now is informing your employee in writing of what they are.
And the same thing applies with flexible work too. So if a person comes to you and says, I need flexible work arrangements and this means A, B and C for me, the same thing applies. You are obligated to discuss it with them and respond to that request in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And the same reasonable business grounds or reasons for refusing that would apply. So just like we've run through there, if any of those apply for that situation as well, that would be okay, but it would be about explaining that to the employee.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the things that you need to do to manage people in your business? We've got changes to legislation, different generations in the workplace, managing the expectations of the people that you employ. Why not hand all that over to the experts and get on with what you do best? The experienced team at Aster HR can quickly give you the advice that you need and get you headed in the right direction. With our HR support and coaching for you with managing people, it all becomes so much simpler. Schedule your free call today at asterhr.com.au. Now let's get back to the episode. So with the right to request flexible work, the people who have that right to request is also expanded a bit.
Yes, you're
and
right.
it's sort of specified as, it might be someone who is pregnant or people who are in situations where they or a member of their immediate family is subject to domestic or family violence. It's worth having all those things in mind. We've got another episode on family and domestic violence leave, which is a separate thing again.
Yes.
And I think what this points to, this and the extension of unpaid parental leave, is being able to accommodate that in your mindset and your culture in the organisation. So you may not have provided these things before or had to consider them, but there'll be publicity around this. So you can expect that employees are going to be better informed about what their rights are.
It's definitely happening even in recruitment as well. We're experiencing it, Susan. So we know
true.
Candidates are almost expecting it when they're entering a new job. So why not once they're in it as well?
So I guess what we're saying is you can't just go, well, that's not what we do. We're not going to do it around here because we need this, this and this. You're actually going to have to be able to explain why that's reasonable or why refusing the extension of leave or the flexible work is unreasonable in your business circumstances.
And that's important to think of all those different types of scenarios of people, stages of life, if you like, of people that might need to ask for that flexible work arrangement. The legislation would previously have said it was just around someone having a school-age child or perhaps a child with additional needs. It was around childcare.
Or returning to work.
Yeah. Whereas now it's quite more open, that definition. So, very good point to have to open your mind up to that as well and what your business can do to accommodate that.
And as you will have gathered from our other episodes, better to be prepared for that rather than have to suddenly adjust the way you do things.
Absolutely. Because the next thing in terms of what it means for your business is that the commission can now get involved to resolve a dispute. So let's say, your employee asks for another 12 months of maternity leave or parental leave. You say no for whatever reasonable reason, and there's a dispute there because the employee really needs that. They have the right to go to the commission and have the commission come and hear that and be mediator to that situation. So that's new.
That's new, yeah.
That can happen that way. And the same thing for flexible work arrangements as well.
Mm-hmm. Something you probably don't want to waste time on.
No. You'd want to avoid that definitely. So I think, like you're saying, thinking about culture, thinking about what you can do beforehand, before those things come about, will help you in resolving those sort of things and finding the middle ground, what works for you and your employees so that all can be happy.
Exactly, because that's what we want.
That's right.
A happy workplace.
So where do we start, Susan? We know all of that. What do we do with that information? Where can we begin?
Well, I'd start by looking at your parental leave and flexible work policies, if you have them. If you don't have them, time to get some.
Yes.
And make sure that they're up to date. And if you do have them, yes, make sure that you've taken this into consideration and updated your policies.
Okay. I'm going to say go back to the always talk to staff. I think it's important to share this information with staff. Like you said, it's publicised. They might have already heard about it. So talking about it in your team meetings or in an email newsletter or whatever it is, sharing that information with them that, hey, we know this has come about. We're going to do something about it and this is what we're going to do about it. Bringing that to their attention, I think, is a really courteous thing to do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how powerful that is. Rather than the employee sitting there thinking, oh, well, I'm hearing about this, but my employer hasn't said anything about it. No one's mentioning it at work. What's really going on? It almost gives the impression that you're trying to hide something from them.
True, yeah.
So if you're wanting to have a motivated group of employees who feel like they're engaged and they know what's going on in their business, then show them that you're up with it, you're taking action, and that can be very powerful.
And with that, you would need to train your managers or your leaders.
Definitely.
They'll have a different position in the organisation and often looking after a team themselves. So about talking to them about what this means, what your policy means in real life, because they're likely the people that will receive that request and have to do something with it.
So you really need a process then, a procedure for what happens. How does the staff member apply? Who does that application go to? Who approves it?
Yeah.
That all needs to be covered in your policy. And to Angela's point about training your team leaders and managers, they need to know that they can't just dismiss a request out of hand because that could really land you in some trouble.
That takes me to probably my final thought there around being open to flexibility. Like you talked about, being mindful how that affects your culture, but just, thinking about different ways of working. If a person comes to you with requests of flexibility, and there can be a lot of different things, whether it's adjusted start times or different work locations, working hybrid, whatever it is, being open to hearing that and discovering how it can work in your workplace. I think we've all been forced into it during COVID.
Definitely.
Good or bad or ugly. But learning from that, I guess, and being open to what might be possible.
Yeah. And so I guess, as usual, there'll be some relevant links in our show notes. Please refer there.
So we hope that today's episode was a helpful one for you around the Secure Jobs Better Pay Act and the specific areas around parental leave and flexible work that's coming into play from the 6th of June. What will be one thing that you will take away from today's episode? Perhaps you'll think about what flexible opportunities could happen in your work. Maybe you will think about your policies and start there, or just simply talk to your staff about these changes. Thanks for listening to the Work Wonders podcast, brought to you by Aster HR. Hit the subscribe button now to never miss an episode. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, you can find us over at asterhr.com.au. See you in the next episode.